Hi, I'm Tracy from XLACE and I'm here to show you a quick 1-hour demo of lots of different tricks to use in Excel. If you've seen me talk before, you know I absolutely love spreadsheets and I love using all the new tricks and tips that make spreadsheets easier and make the work that you're doing more automated, more efficient. I also love colours, you're going to see that as well. So what I'm going to show you today is how to manage your task management. So I'm going to use that as the subject, if you like, but I'm going to show you lots of different tricks. I'm going to show you different formulas. I'm going to show you the weekday, the week number, today formulas, as well as the VLOOKUP. We're also going to use the function of data validation. We're going to use some named ranges, and we're going to use pivot tables and slicers. So everything I'm going to show you can apply to any spreadsheet that you work on, not just the task management. So hopefully you should get some brilliant hints and tips that you can start using straight away in all of your spreadsheets. Okay, so I'm going to start by sharing the screen so you can see the spreadsheet I'm going to work on. Here it is. So this is one I've made earlier, if you like. So this is a task manager file. There's a handful of sheets in here. Essentially how it works is this is the main sheet, the data sheet. In here I've got all the different columns of all the information I'm going to collect. So you can see here I have a row for each different task. So I've got a row there for and I've got a pick list on the green cell, the green column. I have a pick list so you can see what the type of work is. So this first row 4, that is work for a client. The client name is B Company. The description is I'm going to create a Power Query report. This column I've put in the estimated time in hours that it's going to take me to complete the task, which is 4 hours. I tend to stick to round half hours or full hours. Don't get involved in minutes because it's just too much. It's too difficult to work out. So stick to halves and full hours. I've then put in the date I'm going to work on it. It's obviously an old spreadsheet. So this was the 4th of January 23. These 3 columns, or 2 columns, let's say, you can fill them in if you want to. They're not essential to the process. These are just for me to keep a track of when I did actually work on it and how long it actually took me. So if you want to go back and see how good you are at planning, which may help you to plan better in future, they're kind of useful tools to have in there. But use them if you want to, if they're relevant, if they're necessary. This column is completed. This again has a pick list. So in here, I choose yes or no when the task has been completed. The yellow fields, and I always use yellow when the cells contain formulas, so that means I don't have to worry about what is being entered in there. Okay, so in this column, I've got a formula that calculates what the day is that I'm planning to work on it, so it tells me it's Wednesday. In a field of its own, I've got this column which tells me what the week is that I'm going to work on it, what the week number is, and that's how I can differentiate from one week to the next. You can see these are all week 2, these are all week 3. And they calculate themselves, so I don't have to worry about them. And then this column calculating the year. Okay, so essentially I would literally just pop in new rows for every single task that I have. I'd put in the date in this column, and there's a formula in there as well. Oh no, there isn't. Well, there could be. I've obviously took that out. So in there, you would just overwrite whatever date's in there with the actual date you plan to work on it. When you've worked on it, you can then mark it as complete with a yes or a yes as you work on them. Okay, and the intention of this is, in fact, let me take these out a second because I want to show you the second sheet, which is task management. And what this does is now going to summarize all of this. So if I go into this sheet, this now shows me I've selected week 2. It shows me a column for the client, a column for the description, and then every day of the week. And it shows me how many hours I'm going to need in Wednesday, 6.5, 6 hours assigned in Thursday, 8 hours assigned on Friday. The beauty of this is that I used to be terrible at saying, yes, I'll do that next week. And then realizing, oh, but I'm already a little bit busy next week. So what this does is this allows me to see when the next day is I've got a little bit of free time. So it helps me not to over plan myself. And then the other beauty of it is, so you can see in there Wednesday, so that's the week commencing Monday the 2nd, that's the 2nd, 3rd, this is the 4th of January. You can see there I've got 6.5 hours. If we go back to the data sheet, that's Wednesday the 4th. Let's say this actually works out that it's going to be 3 hours work. So if I literally change that to 3 hours, if I click back on the task management, that automatically is updated to 3 hours. And now I've got 9 hours work for Wednesday. Okay. When Wednesday comes, it may well be that that is completed. So yes, but I don't manage to complete these 2. So I could literally change those days to the 5th and put those as the 5th. When we go back to task management, we can see it automatically update. So Wednesday's now got no work planned because we've completed the work that we did have planned, and Thursday has shot up to 11 hours. So it just helps us to redig our task plans when things change, when our priorities change, when we don't get round to finishing everything, and we can just see what an impact that has on the next day. And again, we might need to share some of that out into Friday. Quite often, my life spills into the weekends, or we could even look at week 3. For week 3, we've only got work planned in for Monday and Tuesday, so we might start planning working for the Wednesday, the Thursday. But the beauty is we literally just change the dates of these items here. If I put that as the 17th, automatically this calculates here, that's week 4. When I click back into the task management, you can see we now have week 4 on the slicer that we can select from. So I can now say what's in week 4, and we can see there's only one task in there. So that is what I'm trying to achieve, and that's what I'm going to show you how to build your own version of this today. Okay, so we're going to start with a completely blank spreadsheet. This is called book 1. If I can get that thing to disappear, come on, disappear. It might. But this is book 1. Although it's a blank spreadsheet, I have already tinkered a little bit with it. So if I just unhide a sheet, I've just done this so you don't have to watch me typing, because that's just boring and not really efficient for anybody's time. So click OK. So there's some dummy data we're going to use. So I'm just going to copy and paste from there, so don't worry. So this will be sheet 1. So where would I actually start? What's the starting point? With a great big blank spreadsheet like this, I want to achieve what you've just seen there in the next hour on this sheet. So I would start by, I'd normally start about row 3, usually. I always tend to leave blank rows at the top. Just a habit of mine. It means I can put totals and headings and stuff like that in if I wanted to. You can start wherever you want. So I would start on row 3, and I would just pop in headers for the different columns. So I'd start with a type column. I would then in column B, I'd call this one client. This one would be description. And I normally do really good typos when people are watching me, so bear with me. I'm going to call this estimated time, and then hours. Great typos already. Estimated time in hours. We could then put in the actuals if we wanted. I'm going to leave them out for now. I'm going to call this planned 8. I am going to have the next one would be called the completed, and then we would have the day, and then we'd have the week number. Okay, so they're the columns I'm going to work with today. So these column headers, you could have as many or as few of these columns as you need. They don't have to be named the same as mine. You can call them whatever you want. You could have 100 columns in there. If you've got lots of relevant information that you wanted to capture for each task, have a new column. It's really, really simple. So that's the starting point. I would then take these headers, so highlight all the cells, and I just format them so they stand out as headers. So I'd make them centered. I would wrap text. I would probably bold them. I'd probably make them a little bit bigger with a font. I would probably make them the columns a little bit wider. So while all these cells are highlighted, I'm just dragging column A. Let me hold on. I click free parking here. It looks like free parking. If I now make them all a little bit wider, it makes them all the same width as each other by doing that. Okay. So now I've got that row there. I'm also going to put a background colour on those cells. I'm going to make them a peachy colour. I'm going to right click format cells, and I'm going to go into borders, and I'm going to put a thick border on the top and on the bottom. In fact, I'm just going to do outline inside. That's easier. So I'm basically putting that big thick border around all of them. There we go. So that's looking better already, looking like headers already. These cells here, I'm going to highlight just this handful, and I'm just going to right click and put some borders on these. So just to skip the dotted lines, I'm going to do inside, and I'll do outline as well. Now, because I'm doing outline, it's actually going to change this row here to the dotted line instead of the solid line. So I think I'm just going to switch that one, choose the thick line, and I'm just going to change it to that line there. So that should work. She says, let's have a look. Gorgeous. Let's make this row a bit wider again. Okay, so we've got the thick borders on. Now, because I put borders on, I would now get rid of, I'm in the view ribbon, but I can't see because I've got this silly box up the top. Go on, disappear. I can't make it disappear. There it goes. So I can now go into view and click grid lines off so they disappear, so they're not in my way all the time. Now I would format these cells to collect the relevant information. So client and description, they don't need any formatting because they're just already default formatted. That's what we're going to put in there. This cell, this column here, so it highlights all of the cells. I want to put the hours in there, and I would start by just centering the text, which appears in the middle. I would also right-click the mouse, go to Format Cells, because I know this is going to contain a number that might be half or even quarters at a push. So I would change it to a number with 2 decimals, okay, so that it appears neatly. Okay, this one will be a date. So again, I would right-click Format Cells, and in the number tab here, I'd choose the category of date. Okay, and we could use that category, which would make it appear like that. Actually, what I would do here is I go into custom and I create a custom format, because I'd want to include the day of the week so that it's clear to me when I put the date in. So I delete all of that. With D's, M's and Y's, I would put in 3 Ds for the 3-letter abbreviation. In fact, let me put an actual date in there. If I do Control colon, puts in today's date. Okay, I'm going to center that for a start. I'm then going to right click Format Cells. So in custom, I am actually going to put in, delete all of that, start with 3 Ds. So it puts in the day of the week, which is a Sunday. The 3-letter abbreviation, it gives us the 3-letter abbreviation for the day of the week. If I put in 4 Ds or any more, it gives me the full word, okay? So I'm going to leave it with 3 Ds. I'm going to put a space and another 2 Ds. So now it's going to tell me it's Sunday the 4th. So that's the 3-letter abbreviation for the day of the week, and then the 2 Ds gives me the actual date. So that's Sunday the 4th. Again, another space, 3 M's for the month. And again, it gives me the 3-letter abbreviation instead of the actual number of the month. And then again, another space, and then 2 Y's for the year, which gives me the 23. If I put 3 Y's in or any more, it would give me the 2023 part as well. I'm going to stick with the 23 for now. I'm going to click OK on there. Now, I've only formatted that one cell, not all of them now. So I'm going to copy, highlight these other cells in the column, right click, and I'm going to choose this paste option, which is formatting. Oh, so it's going to paste in the formatting, but it's also pasted in that thick border. So again, I'm going to right click, format cells. This can be faffy. Go into border, and I'm going to change it, put the skinny lines in the middle there. There we go. Oh, and there as well. Just change that one at the top. At the bottom it is that one. Okay, so that's better. So they're all dates now. This one is going to be a yes or no. We'll come back to that one. These two are going to have formulas in. So first of all, I would colour those cells in yellow, pale yellow, so that I know that they're formulas. I'd also centre the text, and then we'll come back to those in a minute. Okay. Now, the other thing I'd do with this date field, because if I enter a date, I hope you all are already entering dates with backslash separators. You can see there the date's been entered with a backslash separator. If I was to enter a date with full stop, so if I did 4.6.23, it would format that text as, it would format the cell as text, okay, and not recognise it as a date. So that's going to cause an issue. So what I would do with all of these cells is I'm going to add some data validation to them. So data validation means you can restrict what you can enter into a cell. So I want to force the user to always have to enter a physical date in the correct format. So I would highlight all the cells in the data ribbon here. Over this tab here, this is a little bit squished just because it's on the projection. But you can see there the top half is data validation. So click on there, it comes up with this screen, and this is our validation criteria that we can set. So it defaults to allow any value, as does every cell in an Excel spreadsheet. What we're going to do with this now is I'm going to restrict it to only allow a date to be entered. So if I click OK, we could also enter a date between a specific start and finish date. So this is great if you just wanted it to be this spreadsheet's only for 2023, so you couldn't enter any dates outside of that. That would be really great. We could also change it for any of these options. So we can make it greater than a specific date or less than a specific date. So you've got all these different things you can use. In this instance, I'm actually not bothered what date somebody uses. I just want them to enter a date. So what I do is I'd use this format and put the start date and make it 1st of January 2000, say, because I'm not bothered what date, but really it's a task list. You're probably not going to enter a date prior to today because that would just be silly. But I would, in this instance, just use 2000. The end date, you could put 31st of December, and again, I'll put 3000. Or another one I always type wrong is 2019, 2018. I always type it 2109, 2108. So it would actually be useful here if I make that date. I can't enter it later than 2100. And all it does is it means that if I do enter it, it will give me a pop-up message to tell me it's invalid, which makes me enter it correctly the first time rather than having to correct it afterwards. It means I don't enter the information wrong in the first place, which is fab. Okay, so I'll put 2,100 in for now. You can put in an input message. So let me put in a title for the date, and I will put a note in, please enter using the format CDMMYY. And not a capital L there. So it just will inform the user how to enter something into this cell. Okay, we could also change the error. In fact, I'll come back to that one. Let me just click OK for now. So I have included the validation, or the cells where you're seeing this little pop-up, and that's information for the user. Every time they select one of these cells, they'll see instructions on how to enter the data. When we click onto this cell, there's no data validation in there, so the pop-up message goes away. Only these columns when you see that pop-up. You see it disappears and then it comes back. Okay. So what happens now if I was to enter a full stop? If I did 4.6, I can't do it wrong, see? 4.6.23. When I press enter, I get this message and it says this value doesn't match the data validation restrictions defined for this cell. Really unhelpful message, because it's not clear really for a non-techie user who doesn't know what data validation is. Doesn't tell them what they've done wrong, doesn't tell them how to fix it. All the options they have is retry, where they can re-enter. If they still think they've done it right and keep pressing enter, it'll just come back in a loop to this. So they can go to help, not very helpful. It takes you to the internet and you can read all about data validation, which is great, but it doesn't tell you how to fix it in this instance. You've then got cancel as well, and that basically erases it. And then if they didn't know about the backslashes, they'll just keep doing it wrong. So what is great about this, if I go back to data validation, what we can do is we can change the error message appears here. So I could put in their date, could spell it right, and I could put in the error message. So actually I'm going to copy this from the input message. Okay, so I'm going to pop that in. Please enter using the format. So basically when it pops up, it will give them this message. Let me click OK. So if I put some gobbledygook in, press enter, there's the message. Please enter using the format. So it tells them exactly what they've gone wrong and how to fix it. Then they can read and go, oh, I'm supposed to put dates, months and years in. So they can put 4/6/23. Notice I'm not entering the zeros. You don't need to enter the zeros. You just put the numbers in. Okay, so there we go. There's our date in there. So these cells, because they've got some guidance, I would again highlight these in a green shade. So again, when the user is opening the spreadsheet, they'll be able to see all the green ones have got sort of some data validation in. Okay, so that now means that the user will definitely be using a data. The next cell, I would use a completed. I would put again some data validation in there. So again, I would center that text. I would colour the cell in green, and I would put some data validation in, because in here we want them to use yes or no. So again, in data validation. So back to settings. Oh, I've just forgotten something on here. Let me just double check. If I click on the data validation, so right, so in this cell, this is one of my massive bugbears that I always do wrong, and I've just done it wrong, so that's brilliant. So I can show you how I've done it wrong. So basically, I'd selected that one cell, went to data validation, on the error alert of it, I've typed in the error. Okay, great. Unfortunately, because I've only selected one cell, I've not applied it to this cell. So now if I click on here, data validation, there's no error alert. There's only the error alert on one cell, which is really annoying. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight all of the cells. I'm going to go into data validation, and then it will tell me, oh, these cells we've selected, they've got different criteria. So it says the selection contains more than one type of validation, because that one's got an error alert on, the others don't. So do I want to erase current settings and continue? Unfortunately, in fact, I'm going to do cancel. What I could do instead is I could copy the format of that cell. So I could select that cell, right click, and choose formatting, and that will copy the data, not formatting. If we're going to pay special, I can copy the validation, which is the data validation. Okay, so I've copied it into there. If I highlight the rest of these cells, and again, I'm going to right click and I'm going to pay special, I'm going to copy the validation. Okay, so now if I click on validation, I've got the error alert in all cells. And also, something that's really helpful with this, if you select data validation on settings, you've got this box at the bottom left. You can apply these changes to all of the cells with the same settings. So if I tick this now, you'll see it's highlighted all of those cells because they've all got the same settings as each other. Okay, so that's a massive top tip. So let me click OK on there. Okay, so I'm going to go back to completed again now. So I'll fix my issue there. So we're completed. I'm going to highlight all the cells to apply the data validation to. I'm going to go into data validation. On settings, I'm going to choose, in this instance, I'm going to choose a list. Okay, and our list, it wants to know what is the source. So the source, because there's only two things I want to choose from, yes or no, I can just type it into this list. If I type in yes, I then use a comma to separate for the next item you can choose on that list. And I just type in no. You can put space in between if you wanted to. You can't really use your arrows very easy when you're in there because it does that. So yes, comma, no. That's fine. Again, I could put input messages and errors if I wanted to. I'm not going to bother in this instance. I'll click OK. And what you'll see now on these cells, all of these cells, you've got this little arrow appears to the right, and that's your data validation pick list. Okay, so now you can just enter yes, you could enter no, or you could delete and leave it blank, it doesn't matter. The important thing for this column is that it's got a yes or it hasn't got anything. Okay, now that was super simple. When we go back into data validation, we can edit that if we wanted to add any other items to that list. It's dead easy to use. Okay, so that's a list. Okay, so that's the completed. I would then also put some data validation in this type column. So I would format these cells in green again. Now this, I want a pick list again, but I want to have a specific list of different criteria of different types. So I would have in fact, I'm going to call this sheet data. I'd have a new sheet, and I would call this one setup. And on the setup page is where I'd have all my lists. So here's one I made earlier, got dummy data. These are my list of different expense types. So I'd copy those into setup. I would paste those in. I'd give them a heading called type, because that's the column they relate to. I'd bold that, center and make it bigger maybe. I always also tend to highlight these cells in green so I know I can edit them. Again, I would just put some borders on there. So outline, inside, that'll do, that's lovely. And again, another thick border on the bottom of there. So that thick border on the bottom. There we go. And again, I'll take the grid lines off. So in the view ribbon, untick grid lines, look like a big piece of paper. It's easier on the eye. Okay. So now that is my list of expense types. Now, if I go back to the data sheets here, what we could have done here is highlighted all those cells, gone into data validation. Where's data? Unmute myself. So if we go into data ribbon, back into data validation, what I could do here is choose list like we just did with the completed column, and I could type in all of those items on that source list of the type list that I've just put in setup. But because there's quite a few of them, it's going to take me a while to do. It'll be difficult to put them in alphabetical order, and it's difficult to see to update. So there's another way that we could actually include that list there, and that is by having a list on a separate sheet here. Now I'm going to move into another function here. I'm going to show you named ranges, because what I'll be doing is I'll be telling this pick list in these cells that I want it to refer to the page of setup, the setup page, and from cells B3 to B10. So it would literally have a range that would look like this, and it would have dollar symbols around it. B $3 colon dollar B dollar that's pound dollar what row is it? 10. Okay, so if I didn't have a named range, that is the absolute cell reference that would be included, and it looks difficult. It's not easy on the eye to look at because it's got all the dollars. It's difficult to differentiate between a column letter and a dollar, and a number 5 and a dollar. So what I would be doing instead of having all of that included anywhere is I would give this range of cells of B3 to B10 on the setup page. I'd give it a name. Okay, I can do that by highlighting the cells like I have done, and this box here is your name box. If I click in there, I can literally type in a name for that range of cells. So I could call this type, literally type in the word type and press enter. That now is fixed at B3 to B10. So this range here is now known as type. So going forward, I can just refer it to it as the name range of type. So you can tell straight away which one's easier. And the other beauty of having a name range is that on this name box, again, you've got a little arrow to the right. If I click on the arrow, it gives me a list of all of the name ranges. So after you've slept and you wake up and you think, oh, where's that name range I created? We all do it. You could literally select from that list, there's type, and it will highlight for you the actual range of cells that are included in that range. And even if we were on this data tab and we go, oh, we had a name range for those, didn't we? Again, we could, from this sheet, we can click on the drop down, we'll see the list, there's only one so far. And I will select type, it will take me to the setup page and it's highlighted the range of cells that's included in that range, okay? So now we've got that name range, let me just delete these, tidying up. Now we've got that name range set up, what we can do with our data validation is we can highlight the cells, we can go to data validation, and with our list, we can now, in the source box, instead of typing them in, we can refer to that list. And the brilliant thing about having a name range is we can now press a magic button on the keyboard, which is F3. You might need to press function with this. I didn't. But when you press F3, you now get a list of all of your name ranges. I've only got one. So I'm going to use the type, obviously, and click OK, and it pops into that box there. So my data validation list in these cells is going to be based on my name range called type. So that is far easier to look at than all those dollars. It also, if you use good names for your name ranges, it tells you exactly what it's looking at straight away. So if it had the name range of setup B3 to B10, I'd have to go to the setup page and look at what's in those actual cells. So it doesn't make it easy to understand name ranges. Ace, always the way forward. I recommend name ranges as best practice all the time. Okay, so please use them. Okay, so that's in. If we click OK, again, we could put input messages and error alerts. I'm not going to bother today. I just click OK, and you'll see we now get the big list, and we can just select from that list. So it's easier to enter things. We don't have to manually type all that text in. There's no risk of typos. There's no risk of changing abbreviations and stuff like that. So it just makes it quicker and easier. And again, ensures that the user will enter the data right the first time. Okay. So that's data validation and name ranges. One thing just to tell you on name ranges, by the way, when I type in the name here, you can't use spaces or characters. You can use a mix of uppercase, lowercase and numbers, but you can't start your name range with numbers. Okay, and your name range cannot be named after a cell reference. So for example, if I type in there leg 1, 2, 3, hang on, I can type that very well, leg 1, 2, 3, thinking it's a name range, when I press enter, it will actually navigate to column LEG, and that was row 1, 2, 3, okay, because that is an actual cell reference. So the important thing to know when you're creating your name ranges is that the last column letter, if I go right along to the end, is XFT. So basically, most 3-letter words will be a cell reference. So any 3-letter words followed by a number that's less than 1,048,576, which is the last row number, will always be a cell reference. So I tend to get around that by always entering 4-letter words as a minimum as a name range. Or you could, if I did leg underscore one, oh, let me get in the name box. If I do leg underscore 1, 2, 3, that isn't a cell reference because no cell reference has the underscores in. So that's another way to get around. If I press enter now, it says cell A1 is now the reference of leg 1, 2, 3. And if you click on the list name ranges, you can see we now have two to choose from. Okay, one's irrelevant because I'm just making that up. But that's just top tip on your name ranges. Okay, so going back to the data sheet, by the way, you can change the colours of these sheets. So I would make this data sheet. So if you right click your mouse, you can just go to tab colour. I'll make this green because green for goes where you enter the data. Setup, this is like you're getting ready. So again, I'd right click tab colour and make that yellow. So again, it just makes it easier if you're talking to other people. You say on the green sheet, do this. So you don't have to tell them what it's called and stuff like that. It just makes it easier. So for me, data. So I think, is that pretty much, is that done? Is that good to go? I would probably put a filter on, highlight the headers. And then in the data ribbon, you've got the big fat funnel in the middle. Filters are on, great. I would put some formulas in here into these day columns. So in fact, before I do that, I'm actually going to paste in some dummy data, which I've got from here. Here's what I made earlier. So I'm going to paste in these columns of data because you don't want to watch me entering all this in. That's boring. Okay, so I've literally popped in some couple of rows of data for the type, the client description, how many hours. We can make these columns bigger now. We've got genuine data in, what date we've planned to work on it. So in these columns, I need a formula to work out what the day of the week is. So I know we can see the day of the week in there, but I want this column just to have the 3-letter abbreviation for the word itself. So in here, we would use the formula of a weekday. So I would do equals weekday, open brackets, and then it wants a serial number. So the serial number would be linked to the date. So I'm going to select the planned date. So I'm going to do E4 and then a comma. It then wants to know what the return type is. And this is your list of options. So if I use code number 1, it's going to use numbers 1 being a Sunday through to 7 being a Saturday. Okay, so if I wanted my week to start on a Sunday, so date number 1 will be Sunday, I use code number 1. If I use code number 2, the second row, it's going to make Monday date number 1 and Sunday number 7. So that's one I like actually. So I'm going to use code 2. So literally the number 2 is the code and a close bracket. Okay, so the result of that formula, that's telling me that the weekday of cell E4 is day number 3. Unfortunately, the result of the weekday formula always gives us a number of the day of the week. So obviously, take that out again, you can see that the number 1 would be Monday. So Wednesday is obviously the 3rd day in the week, starting from Monday, so it will be number 3. So that's why it's given us number 3, which is okay, but we don't have to work that out every time. So what I do as well, in the setup, I'm going to do another little list. I would put in that, I'd put the number of the day of the week. So day of the week number 1 would be Monday. So I just have these 2 columns here. Again, I'll probably center these so they make sense. And then we can drag these down, can't we? So we get to Sunday. So now we've got the days of the week 1 to 7, and that day number 1 relates to Monday, day number 2 relates to Tuesday, day number 3 relates to Wednesday, etc. So again, let's give these a name range. So highlight the 2 columns, and I'm going to call these days. Press enter. That's now another name range we have. We have 3 now. Woo. So now we have that name range. I'm going to use a VLOOKUP formula. So what I'm going to do is that formula there, the weekday formula, returns the number 3. So I want to VLOOKUP that number 3 in this list here. So it'll look in the first column to find the number 3. And then I'll tell it to give me an answer from column number 2, which is the second column in that range. So it's, the result it should give me is Wednesday. Yes. Okay. If you're not familiar with VLOOKUP, there are 8. And if you are familiar with VLOOKUPs, there's a brand new formula called an X lookup, and it negates lots of the issues you normally get with the VLOOKUP. So have a look. Lots of looks going on today. Good luck looking that one up, but it is brilliant. Okay. So if you're around the weekday formula, I'm going to wrap the VLOOKUP formula. So I literally type in VLOOKUP and an open bracket. Now all of this is going to represent the lookup value. So if I highlight all of that, this is a brand new thing in Excel, by the way, it pops up above what the result is as well, the result of part of your formula, which is ACE. It's telling me there, so that's the lookup value, and the result is, let me highlight that again, the result is number 3. Yes, so it's going to look up number 3. We then want to tell it what the table array is, so where do we want it to look? Again, we've got a lovely name range now, so I can press F3 to get a list of name ranges, and I can choose days because that's the range I want it to look in. Okay, so it's going to look in those 2 columns. The first column where it's going to find a match, and then second comma for the next argument, it wants the column index number. This represents what you want to return when I find a match. So the first column was the day of the week, the first column was the number of the day of the week, and the second column was the actual 3-letter abbreviation. So I want the second column, so I'm literally going to put in a number 2. Then we have a comma again, and then the next argument is our range lookup, and we can put in either true or false. So false would represent an exact match, true means an approximate match. What this means is, when I look for number 3, do you want me to find the nearest match to number 3 or an exact match? Exact, please. So 9 times out of 10, you'll be using false in there anyway, okay? The XLOOKUP gives you 4 different options as well, so there's more options on there, but I have used all of them. So when you're looking up text, or in this instance, because there's only 7 items to look for, you're going to use an exact match. Normally, when you're looking up dates and trying to find maybe a quarter date or age groups or something like that, you'd be using true, finding the nearest match. Okay. So that's that. If I press enter, now we have Wednesday. Cool. Okay, and I can double click that all the way down. In fact, I think I'll just copy and paste special formulas. Use that one, formulas. So paste it in. Here you can see it's given me Saturday, even though it's blank. So again, I'm going to put an if around that, and I could say, tell you what, no, I won't. Yeah, well, I'm going to put an if. I'm going to say if, open bracket, if that equals nothing, and nothing is represented by two speech marks, if it's nothing, then put nothing. Otherwise, this formula. And we put another close bracket on the end, and we're good to go. So now I'm going to drag that down. Oh, that's pasted in the format. So I'm going to do fill without formatting. There we go. You can see here where there's no date. So when E19 is equal to nothing, it returns nothing. It doesn't do the VLOOKUP because there's nothing for it to look up. Okay. So they now work and give us relevant dates. Bam. Okay, so that was a lot to get your head around. Sorry, that was a bit quick. This one, I'm going to do the week number. This one's a lot easier. I'm literally going to say equals week num, and it pops up there. So we'll have the week number. Oops. And it wants the serial number. So again, start date. So I want the week number of that date. And then again, comma, return type. So again, we choose the code for what day the week starts on. So I'm going to do code 2 again. So starting on a Monday and then a close bracket. That is week number 2. And I'm happy with that giving me a number 2. That's fab. So copy that down. Again, I'm just going to do without formatting. Great. This is giving us ones, even though they're empty. So again, I'm going to wrap around that. And if that is equal to nothing, then return nothing. Otherwise, carry on with the formula as it was. Okay, and then double click that down. Oops. And then without formatting, because it's copying in the solid, the top sort of solid, the thicker line, thicker border. Why can't I speak? Okay, so this is now complete and practical file for us to use to enter in all of our tasks. Okay, so obviously with this could be good enough. You could literally say filter on week 2. They're all my tasks for week 2. Then when it is Wednesday, you could just show me Wednesday, and that's all my tasks for today that I'm going to do. You could filter on that, say only show me the blanks, and show me the S's. So that now is a list of what's left to be done. So we could just carry on just using this at this point if we wanted. But let's take it a step further. Okay, let's summarize into that pretty sheet that we saw before. I'm just removing these these filters. So what I'm going to do to summarize it is I am going to build a pivot table. So pivot table is essentially going to analyze for me all of this data in here. And it allows us the option to slice and dice it however we need to. So the first thing I'm going to do, because I'm obsessed with name ranges, is I'm going to give all of these range of cells a name range. I'm going to highlight them all into here, and we're going to have a name range called data. So data and press enter. Okay. So now I've got a name range. We have our list of name ranges is growing. So we've got dates, we've got days, we've got leg 1, 2, 3, which we're going to remove. We've got type. Okay. So now we need to insert pivot table. So the insert ribbon. First button is pivot table. If you click on the top half of there, it gives us this little screen, and it wants to do 2 things. So first thing is, what is the table or range we want to base the pivot table on? And it guesses. Now Excel will always guess. So it's best it's going, oh, you want to base it on the data in cell A3 to H27 on the data sheet. And ironically, yes, we do. But we don't want our name range, our pivot table to be based on the absolute cell reference like that. We want it to be based on name range. So whatever it tells you there, even if it's right, delete it. Okay, and we're going to press F3 on the keyboard to get our list of name ranges, and we're going to say we want it to link to our name range called data. Now the beauty of linking it to a name range is that if we were to have 100 pivot tables, which we could possibly have, and they're all linked to our name range, when we update our name range and tell it we've got more rows in there, all of the pivot tables will automatically update for that change in the range. If we linked it to the absolute cell reference like it was trying to do, we'd have to manually amend every individual pivot table for the range. Okay, so name ranges definitely, please use them on pivot tables if nowhere else. So there's our name range data. Okay, and you can see it comes up with just the text in there as opposed to the horrible cell reference. So again, it's far easier to understand where your data is coming from in hindsight if you look back at it. Okay, so that's the first thing. That's what we're basing our pivot table on. The next thing is, where do you want the pivot table to be placed? We get 2 options, either a new worksheet, which is what it defaults to, or an existing sheet. So I always put a pivot table onto a new sheet, so I'd leave it there. If you want to put on an existing sheet, you can click there, and then this becomes ungrayed, and we can say what's the location. So basically wants to know what cell to put it in. So there I could click on J3, so I want it on the data sheet in cell J3 if you wanted. I don't, so I'm going to go back to new worksheet, and it grays this because it's not relevant anymore. So we're going to have a new sheet, and it's going to create a pivot table based on a name range called data. So I click OK. There's our new sheet, and when it says on the tin, there's our sheet. Sheet 2 on the left hand side is our pivot table. which is currently empty. On the right-hand side is our pivot table field list, and it gives us at the top here a list of all of the column headers. So top tip, before you create a pivot table, the first row that you have the headers on, or the first row of the range that your pivot table is based on, has to have something in every single cell. If any of them are blank, it will not create the pivot table. Okay, so make sure you've always got something in there. So the pivot table. So we've got all the field headers here, and what we can do now is drag and drop these fields into these boxes at the bottom, and we'll see instantly what kind of mess or beautiful report we've created in our pivot table here on the left. Okay, so if I was to take the description or the clients, let's take the clients, if I drag that into the rows, you now see we get a row for every individual client that it found in the raw data. So I'm going to make that screen a little bit bigger. So, okay, so this, I'll make this bit bigger, but not the fields, sorry. So there's a row for each of our clients. And I'll put in the description as well. We'll have another row in there. Now, interestingly, what pivot table does by default is we put 2 items in the rows. You'll see in column A, we now have both the client and the description, but one of the client is bolded and the description is not bold, but it's indented a little bit so we can differentiate, which looks like an absolute mess, doesn't it? So I want to now get rid of this bar again. Annoying. Come on, go away, bar. There we go, it's gone. It just hovers over the fields I'm trying to use. It's very, very frustrating. So this is a bit of a mess, but there's lots of ways we can tidy it up. So one thing just to point out, when we're on the pivot table report here on the left, you'll see we get our field list on the right, and we also at the very top of the screen get 2 extra toolbars. We've got pivot table analyze, and we get design. Okay, when we click off the pivot table back into normal spreadsheet land, the pivot field list disappears, as too do the extra toolbars at the top, because they're only specific to pivot tables. So when we click back on the pivot table, they all come back again. Okay, and you can toggle them on and off as much as you need to. Now, interesting in design here at the top, these are our pivot table styles. So if I click on this arrow here, as I hover over these, you'll see how it's applying the different design options. So because we do have 2 layers, so we've got client and description, we can use these different design options. So it will highlight, so in this instance, it's highlighted the client in the blue font and then in the blue background fill, and then the rows with no fill is the description. So again, it's easy just to identify what we're looking at. You can scroll down and see even further. There's more options. So again, that puts them both in blue with different shades. So again, it's easy to identify. Okay, we can use the orange or the yellow or the green or whatever options you want. So these design options tend to look different depending on the layout you've chosen. Okay, so choose whatever you need. I'm going to go for this one for now. So it's got the black font is the client and the blue font is the description. You'll also notice, because we've got 2 items, that alongside each client, which is the first item in that box, we've got a little minus sign, which means we can collapse that. So if I collapse that, we now just see the total for the client and we don't see the descriptions, but we can now, there's a plus sign, so we can expand it. So I could actually collapse all of these if I wanted to. Minus, 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 minus. Okay. So they're now all collapsed. We're actually only seeing clients, but we've now got the ability to go, oh, what's in C company though? Oh, that's the description. So we can expand and collapse as much as we need to. So it's a really good function. So that's one way to do it. However, I prefer to have client in column A and description in column B. So I'm clicking on the pivot table anywhere, right click, I'm going to go into pivot table options. I'm going to go into display, and I'm going to take this box, classic pivot table layout, which basically is going to give me the separate columns. So click OK. I also need to expand all of these now. This is annoying. I shouldn't have done them in the first place. Okay, let me just expand these. So now what you'll see is we've got 2 columns. So the first column now just represents a client, and the second column just represents the description. Okay, but it very kindly has given us subtotal rows for each of the companies. So again, that's frustrating. We can either left click on the client, go to field settings, and we can tick in the subtotals bit, none, or if you go into pivot table, or not pivot table analyze, into design, the very first option is subtotals, and we can say do not show subtotals. Great, so that's better now. We've got the company and then we've got the description. Okay, so you've still got that sort of drill down ability, but it's just easier to read. The next thing we'll do on the pivot table is we're going to pull in the estimated time for hours, and we're going to put it into the values box. anything we pull in here has to be calculated somehow, and Excel has looked and gone, oh, this column's got numbers in, I can add those together, so it's chosen some. Great, okay. So that now is giving us a total of all of the hours, and that's 34.5 in total. Again, if we can, normally we'd want to format those and give them all to decimals. People would tend to highlight the cells. So there, I've highlighted C5 to C21. You can right-click, format number format or format cells. If you do that, what you're doing is you're highlighting the specific cells on the spreadsheet, okay, which there may or may not change when we change the layout. So the safer way to format anything on a pivot table is to take the value in the, or take the field itself that's in the values box. If you left click that field, you can value the field settings. And here you can customize the name, you can change how it calculates. So you've got sum, count, average. I'm happy with sum. You can go into number formats here. So here, normal format cells, I'm going to go into number, I'm going to do 2 decimals, that's fine, and click OK. And click OK. So what we've now done is we've actually formatted that field, which means that however we change the layout of this pivot table, that field, wherever it appears, will always be formatted in that way. So it's a lot safer. Okay, you've got more control over that. There's our 34.5. We put the column in for day so that we would have the 3-letter abbreviation. So if I take that day field and I drag that into columns, you'll see it now gives me a column for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, etc. Brill. Okay, and then it totals for each day of the week, which is fab. Okay, you'll see we've got that column there because that's all the blank rows. So again, we can apply a filter and say, don't show the blanks. We've got Monday to Friday and then a total for the week, which is really useful. Or not, you can get rid of it if you want to. Now, what we're looking at here, don't forget, we've got, go back to the data, we've got week 2 and week 3. Okay, so what we can, and we've also got some of the work completed. Okay, so what we could do is we could include a completed, and we can put that in the filters box. Been completed, it's currently showing everything that's in that column. If I click on there, I could say only show blanks. So it's not going to show any that are yeses. So this is now just the outstanding items, which is great because it'll continually update as we go backwards and forwards into this sheet, which is fab. That's exactly what we need. Okay, so that's good. So we're halfway there. We're nearly there. We've nearly done it. Again, pivot table. We don't need these background colours, the background grid lines. So again, I would normally get rid of those, except that thing's in my way now. Go into view. Excellent. Untick grid lines. Fab. Let me make that a tiny bit smaller. So what we could now do is we could pull in another filter for the week number. Okay, and in there we could choose week 2. And it would narrow down the spreadsheet and show me the items for week 2, which is great. But you'll see we now get Wednesday, Thursday and Friday, Monday and Tuesday have gone because there was no data for week 2 for those columns. Frustrating, because when I go to week 3, we want to actually be able to see all of the days of the week. Okay, so let me take that filter off again, put it back to all. So what we can do here, if you go to the day, if I left click on there, go to field settings, in layout and print, I can tick this box, show items with no data. So basically it knows that there's Monday to Friday because it's seen it, but I can tell it to include the columns for anything where there's no data. Okay, so click OK. It basically now means we'll always see Monday to Friday, regardless of whether there's data or not. So we'll go to week 2, there's Monday to Friday, but Monday and Tuesday are empty. If I go to week 3, oops, you've still got Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, even though they're blank. And again, if I go to the blank selection, oh, I can't, it's not letting me. Because there isn't any. Okay, that's fine. It's because I've filtered this to show they don't show the blanks. Okay, so the filters are there, they're kind of useful, but Microsoft introduced something even easier than these filters. Okay, and what we can do, if we click on the pivot table anywhere, if you go to pivot table analyze, we can insert a slicer. So these slicers are cool. So if I go into insert slicer, I could insert a slicer for the week number. I could do it for the completed. I could do it for the client if I wanted. In fact, let me leave that off. I'll just do these 2 for now. If I click OK, these are slices now. And slices essentially work very similar to what the filters do. So if I just drag that one over there, and if I drag that one over there as well. Okay, so this one is only ever going to have yes, blank or no in it, I guess. So what I'm going to do is make that a bit smaller. When you're on the slicer as well, you get an extra toolbar at the top, slicers, and we could change the slicer style. So I can make that one yellow if I wanted. There's not many options. You've got light and dark and kind of the same sort of variation of shades. So they're not very exciting. But we could also change how many columns we have. So in there, I could say, show me 2 columns. So you can make them go across the page instead of down, vertical instead of horizontal instead of vertical. Okay, so again, I can make that a bit narrower. You can change the height and the width of the buttons. These buttons inside, you can choose the height and the width of the size of the box as well if you wanted to. Okay, so that's that. We've got the week number here. Again, I'm going to make that a little bit smaller. I'm probably going to put in 3 because there are only going to be one character, aren't they, or 2 characters with the week number. So again, put that there. Change all the sizes. We could make that green or whatever colour you wanted. So basically now we can use these slices instead of using the filters. So let me take the filters off because the filters look rubbish. And again, I can drag these. In fact, let me take that over there. I'm just going to make these columns, these rows, a little bit wider so that I can now pop these up at the top. Okay, so now I can say just show me the blanks. So there's no need to use a filter. And here I can say just show me week number 2, and it narrows down automatically to week 2. I can say show me week 3. Okay, I could, if I let me paste all of this in here. And if I say that was, so the 9th is the Monday, so if I make that some days later, that'll be the 16th. If I drag that down, if I drag it down, oh, hold on, let me not put those in that far because I'll break everything. So I've just put these dates in. So I've got Saturdays and Sundays there. So let me do that again. Drag that down. I can actually now do fill weekdays, so it won't do Saturdays and Sundays. Brilliant. Basically now put dates in all the way up to week 4 and week 5. So now when I go back into the pivot table, if I right click and do refresh, it will pull in all the changes from that raw data. So now I've got week numbers 2, 3, 4 and 5. So if I say week 4, I've got data now for every single day in week 4. I've got data for every day, almost every day in week 5 as well. Week 3, week 2. And it's just a brilliant, simple, easy way to update the data. Okay, so I hope that's given you some good tips that you can use just in general, but also shows you how you can manage your tasks really simply and easily. I genuinely built this kind of tool for myself because I was just fed up of getting lists everywhere and emails and losing track of what I needed to do when, and having that panic moment of, I must remember to do this. When you're trying to focus on something, other things will be popping into my head. So I basically built this for myself, and it's so brilliant. I don't know how I'd function without it. And I've actually made it a product, so it can actually be downloaded off my website. So everything I've just shown you there, you can build your own. But if you prefer to just take one ready-made, it is available on the website. I'll just very quickly show you that. So this is my website. If you go to the product, you can see premium products, and you'll see eventually premium products, and the very first item there is the task manager. If you click to find out more, it takes you to the page, and you can add it to the cart. There's more information below. What it does is a little video demo again, which is pretty much what I've just gone through, but it's how to physically make it. And if you want a little discount, if you use the code when you check out, ACE50, so ACEPASK, the number 50, you'll get a 50% discount. So use that template, and then hopefully use some of those skills that I've just gone through on all of your spreadsheets as well. And maybe even if you just download this, you'll understand sort of how to update it, adapt it, and just hopefully it will make your life a little bit easier. Okay, so my name's Traci Williams. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. Again, Traci Williams, Traci Williams. I post all kinds of tips and articles. There's articles on my website as well you can have a look through. And please do get in touch if you've got any questions or any queries on Excel. It literally is my favourite subject in the whole wide world. And I'd much rather have a conversation with you, so if you're not enjoying Excel, to help answer some questions, because a lot of the time we just don't know what we don't know, do we? So please don't hesitate to get in touch, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. Thank you.